Right, straight into the panel. Sky News Outsiders co-host, Herald Sun columnist, wonderful all-round bird, Rita PANAH, Melbourne City Councillor Nick Reece. Very good bloke, I have to say, for a Labor man, both of them in Melbourne. Rita, I've got to start with you. The fine now, if you're caught with someone in your house that's not meant to be there, doesn't live there, $5,000. Now, Victoria's had the hardest lockdown. It's collected more fines than any other state, yet it's had the worst outcomes. That's a massive disconnect.
And it's been like that from the start. This just didn't happen after the second wave. Remember the first time around when the whole country locked down, Victoria was the one that banned things like golf and fishing, which were allowed elsewhere. Victoria was the only place where people couldn't see their mum for Mother's Day unless they lived with their mum. So it's always had the strictest conditions for citizens, and yet it is the state that had the second outbreak. It has had 90% of all deaths in Australia, and it is an absolute basket case in its COVID response. And even now, we don't know, as we slowly open, if the contact tracing can cope with little spikes and infections, and how we're going to be able to manage, like New South Wales has, which has been open and operating almost close to normal for some weeks and months now.
I've got to go to the whole departure of Jenny Mikakos with you, Nick. I've spoken to a lot of Labor people over the weekend and again today. It's caused a huge cross-factional row. A lot of people really disappointed about how she was treated in the end. What do you know?
Yeah, look, she'd been in the parliament since 1999. She'd risen to a very senior portfolio as health minister in Victoria. And look, she was recognised as a really hard worker, and she was well respected as well, certainly within her own faction, the Socialist Left, the same faction which the Premier Daniel Andrews is in. There is some, deep unhappiness about how this has all been handled, but I don't think that translates into any appetite for any move or significant, retribution against the Premier. The political reality is that his position in the party is unassailable, and probably the more realistic speculation centres on how long he will stay around for, whether he'll serve out the end of this term and go to the next election, or whether, for very personal reasons, he might just decide that he's had a gut feel around Christmas or sometime early in the new year. But the smart money seems to be that he wants to stick around.
That sounded very much, Rita, that Nick was preparing the ground for that family reasons departure come Christmas.
Maybe Nicholas can forget about Melbourne Council and just look further up. Premier of Victoria, why not? He can't do any worse than the current dude. His position is unassailable. I mean, that just tells you how broken and toxic Labor are. That someone who has overseen these catastrophic outcomes in Victoria, health outcomes, social outcomes, economic outcomes, his position is not in jeopardy. I mean, that just shows you how broken the political system in this state is, and it really is quite atrocious. And Jenny Mikakos, she may have been a hard worker, but she was also hopelessly incompetent, inept. It wasn't just the hotel quarantine that she stuffed up or her department stuffed up. Contact tracing has been absolutely abysmal in this state. That also fell under her portfolio. But she can't be alone. Martin Pakula, whose department chose those security companies and signed contracts with them, he's got to go. The police minister's got serious questions to answer. And in fact, the entire gang of 8, Dan Andrews and the 7 senior ministers he's got in his crisis cabinet, they've all got to go at the end of this if there is to be any semblance of them taking responsibility for what's happened in this state.
Nick, I've got to go to you. Rita predicted that Amy Coney Barrett would get the nomination in the Supreme Court 2 years ago, so I think that's a pretty good pick there from you, Rita. But I have to say, Nick, the stuff that's already been levelled at her about her Catholicism, we would be up in arms if she was a Muslim pick or she was a Jewish pick or a Hindu pick, but somehow she's Catholic and it's all okay.
Yeah, I think the Democrats have got to be really careful here. I mean, Jared Kushner made a very telling point about Donald Trump recently, where he said one of his great skills, President Trump, is his ability to be able to outrage and manoeuvre his opponents such that they then take a position on issues which is not supported by the American public, and they find themselves in a political corner. And I think the Democrats have got to be careful on this one. I think most people realise that Trump is not, playing fair ball by trying to rush this appointment through, but they're not going to, I don't think they should go to war with him over it.
No, they'll be very careful, and it's about the same time to fill as Beta Ginsburg was filled in the same amount of time. So anyway, got to leave it there. Run out of time. I'm sorry. We were talking restaurants and small business in Victoria. Rita Panahi, Nick Reece, as always, thank you for your time.